What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Golf on Tap. As always, I'm Jack Bushman, joined by Ross Baran. It's President's Cup week, baby, as the United States taking on the internationals at the Royal Montreal Golf Club up in Canada. For everyone who's tuning in right now on X, make sure to go and hop into the YouTube version of this episode so you can interact with us in the comment section. Let us know your thoughts ahead of this week's President's Cup battle in Montreal. And also make sure to go and follow Golf on Tap for free wherever you may be listening to your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever it may be. So that way you can catch up on all the latest episodes if you're not able to join us live. And also go and follow Golf on Tap on X to get notified whenever we do go live. Ross, as I mentioned, President's Cup week hasn't always been, the most competitive battle between the United States and the internationals, as this is the 15th edition of the President's Cup. The United States boasts a lofty 12-1-1 record. It's obviously a dieted down version of the Ryder Cup, but still an interesting time of the year. It was a fun tournament last year as we saw Tom Kim, despite the internationals getting another pretty handed loss. Tom Kim burst onto the scene that I thought made the energy around the event a little bit more palpable. So Ross, before we kind of break things down, I'm just curious, what are kind of your vibes about the President's Cup as we're just a couple of days away from this thing getting started?
So this one is giving me that vibe where everyone is writing off the international team. I'm expecting the U.S. to win this event. I think with Jim Furyk going down the board, cookie cutter, here's the 12 in points. That's my 12. No, nothing outside the ordinary. I just have this feeling that it's being treated so one-sided that this international team is going to come and put up a fight. I do have the U.S. still winning this week, but I do have this going to Sunday before the U.S. actually closes it out.
And that's what's kind of interesting about this event, with the United States having that 12-1-1 record. As I just mentioned, the internationals have only beaten them once since the creation of this event. It kind of feels like there is that vibe where everyone just expects the Americans to go and mollywop the internationals. And quite honestly, there's a pretty good chance that still does happen. But whenever there is that vibe in the air, Ross, this is kind of random, but I love reading old hockey books, and I actually have been reading one recently. And there was a story about how the Canadians for hockey for forever were considered to be just head and shoulders above the rest of the world. You could take a Canadian and an American. If they had the same skills, the Canadian would just be better because it was their game, until the Russians stepped onto the scene. There was a friendly competition that went down between these two sides, and everyone just assumed the Canadians were going to absolutely wax them. It was an 8-game series. Everyone expected the Canadians to win all 8. And it wound up going down to the final game, and the Canadians won by just 1 goal. So whenever there's that kind of that feel in the air that this isn't going to be close whatsoever, and the other team has nothing to lose, that's when a team is most dangerous, when they have their backs against the wall. And listen, if the United States goes and dominates the internationals, no one's really going to bat an eye at that. But that's when another team is dangerous. I don't expect, like I said, the internationals to come away with a win, but I do think there is potential for it to be closer than what people imagine. I don't think, it's just 100% going to be a complete runaway. So it'll be interesting to see what winds up happening before the Sunday singles, as this event comes to a close like the Ryder Cup does on the final day. We'll see what the scores wind up being, and if it'll be closer than it was last time, where I believe the Americans had an 11-7 lead going into that final day, Ross.
My prediction that I gave a little bit earlier on the Takes Minute earlier tonight was I have this with the U.S. victory on Sunday late, but I have this going 16-14.
So you have it that close, huh?
I have it that the pressure is going to be on, and the U.S. will close it late on Sunday afternoon.
All right. Well, getting into these two teams' rosters, as it's been a little bit of a hiatus for golf season. The Tour Championship was a couple of weeks ago now, right? We haven't had a show in a couple of weeks either, Ross. So I wouldn't blame anyone for kind of brushing this President's Cup to the side as football season has gotten underway as well. But just as a reminder of the 12 players for both of these two teams who are competing this weekend for the Americans, you got Scotty Scheffler, Xander Schauffele, Colin Morikawa leading the charge up top, with Wyndham Clark, Patrick Cantlay, Sahith Theegala, Keegan Bradley after his win at the BMW Championship, Sam Burns, Tony Finau, Brian Harman, Russell Henley, and then Max Homa, probably the most controversial player on the United States, as he hasn't played good golf since the Masters, basically, but still found his way on this roster as the 12th man. And then for the internationals, there's Hideki Matsuyama, Sungjae Im, Adam Scott, Tom Kim, who, as I referenced already, was a huge star at the 2022 President's Cup at Quail Hollow, Jason Day, Benny An, Christian Bezadenhout, Corey Connors, Mackenzie Hughes, Siwoo Kim, Minwoo Lee, and Taylor Pendrith. So just by reading off the rosters there, right, it's pretty clear that the Americans do absolutely have an edge. But kind of going through these rosters here, Ross, talking about the United States side of things, since there hasn't been any official announcement in terms of the pairings that we'd like to see for the opening 3 rounds. By the way, for those who may have forgotten, it is a different format than the President's Cup is. There's only going to be 4-ball on Thursday. There's foursomes or alternate shot on Friday. And then Saturday, the weekend, is really where things get ramped up, as they'll have both 4-ball and foursomes on Saturday leading into Sunday singles. But Ross, for the American side of things, I'm curious, what are kind of some of the pairings that you would like to see Jim Furyk roll with here in Montreal?
So, controversial pick is going to be, they always get paired together and they've got nothing to show for it traditionally in team competition play. And that's the split up of Scotty Scheffler and Sam Burns.
Has to happen.
I'm hoping they do it. Listen, I get it. When they played doubles at the University of Texas, they fucking boat raced the field. They won the doubles championship together, everything. That's almost 10 years ago, guys. Like, let it go. Sam Burns really had one role on the Ryder Cup last year, and that was to play with, because Sam was a captain's pick.
Oh, dude, don't even get me started.
And the only role he had was that you were going to play doubles with Scotty, and you guys are just going to go get every point. They didn't get any points. They got beat every time.
They didn't get any points in the 2022 President's Cup either.
Exactly. That they ran it back saying, oh, well, we think that was a fluke, whatever. Playing together, they've never gotten a point. They've won a national championship in college. They've never gotten a point in one of these events. Split it up.
I'm in 100% agreement.
Biggest thing they need to split up.
Definitely agree there. And just even going back to that Ryder Cup, obviously there was a lot of drama because of Justin Thomas making the team despite not having a very good year. He actually wasn't the one that really made me mad. I was mad that Sam Burns made this team over Keegan Bradley. And what did Sam Burns go and do? Absolutely nothing, along with Scotty Scheffler at the Ryder Cup. So yeah, I 100% agree. You do got to split those two up. I think you leave Xander and Pat together. There's no reason to break those two up. So if Scotty's not with Sam Burns, who would you like to see him with, Ross?
Honestly, if we're gonna go deep into this, I think Scotty needs to play with someone like Wyndham Clark.
What's your reasoning for that?
I believe in an alternate shot format. The two of them, if Wyndham is on, that's where you're going to get your points. I think that's a matchup. And I think Scotty's aura and just the way he kind of plays, Wyndham also kind of matches that at times when he is locked in on his game and hitting his shots, his irons, everything appropriately. I feel like as long as they're both playing well, or as long as one of them plays well, Wyndham will come and kind of fit that vibe and fit. But I think that, especially for moving into the singles and things like that, I think you need to get Wyndham pumped up. You need to get him relevant. And I think pairing him with someone like Scotty to just get every ounce of what's good in Wyndham when he's on. I think pairing him with someone like Scotty to roll out there right away is how you're going to get him locked in for the rest of the weekend.
So are you in agreement with me that Xander and Pat are going to stick together? I don't think there's any way they split up personally.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to split them up. I think that's going to be what the US in the past has hoped Scotty Scheffler and Sam Burns would be. that is going to be the dynamic duo that they will roll out there, knowing that's going to bring home a point.
So we got Xander and Pat there. Do you think they're going to keep Colin and Max Homa together?
I feel like in this situation, you need to for Max and mentality. I think you at least need to start them out there and, let Colin hit some approach shots and get in close. Let Max knock down the putts, take a couple holes, go up a little early. But I think what the key is, you need to get Max in the right mentality to go out and have that attack mentality on Sunday in singles.
I agree. And I also think one area where Max Homa has really, really struggled has been off the tee. Colin Morikawa is a guy who just hits a shit ton of fairways, one of the most accurate drivers of the golf ball. So I think that would be a big help. Also getting that like insurance off the tee, potentially in an alternate shot with him and Morikawa. And I agree, just the vibes, those two guys know each other really well. And you do want to get Max Homa in a good headspace, even though I'm curious your thoughts on this before we kind of get into some other pairings here. I think Max Homa can actually play well in this event. I do believe in his dog. I don't believe in his current form at all. I know it's been really bad, but I think he's a gamer. I think he's someone who can step up to the plate and, own the moment. Like, he's not afraid of the moment. He's someone who has always played well when in contention on Sundays. I wouldn't be surprised to see Max Homa perform better than people anticipate this week.
I think Max knows that he is the Justin Thomas pick this year, that the form and everything do not support you being on this team. It's we know what you're capable of. Now go out here and prove it. And I think as long as he can embrace that and realize what the role is, that no, you're playing like shit right now, dude, but we know how you can play, and that's why you're on this team, is for you to help bring it home on Sunday when we need to. So I think he's got the dog in him. I think maybe this little break, everything he's had since the end of the season, I'm hoping has allowed him to clear some mentality, take a step back, and just kind of reset himself. But I'm hoping he embraces and realizes what this pick meant and why his name is being called. That, yeah, your form doesn't line up does not line up right now, but we know what you're capable of doing, and that's why we want you here.
Okay, so Homa was with Brian Harman, if you remember, at the most recent Ryder Cup. If Homa is going to be with Colin, obviously that duo will not be together. Who would you like to see Brian Harman with? Interestingly enough, I wondered about a him and Scotty pairing with the way that Brian Harman can roll the rock when he's going. I wondered about that, but obviously you said you like to see Scotty with Wyndham. Who would you like to see Brian Harman with?
Honestly, I think we're gonna go dogs.
Oh,
I think I think you probably line up Brian Harman with Russell Henley and roll the dogs out.
Oh, I actually like that. I actually like that. Two sneaky little underdogs together. I like that a lot.
Along with underdogs and Georgia Bulldogs just out there together. I feel like let the dogs hunt.
I had Tony and Sahith.
Quite literally.
Yeah, facts. I had Tony and Sahith. I think that's an interesting combo with the way that Tony can mash the ball and Sahith's short game plus putting. I think that's a really interesting combo. Also, side note, I would have loved to see Sahith and Akshay be a pairing in this event so badly.
So the funny thing is, I had Tony and Sahith on a list, and I flipped at the last second only because sometimes Sahith can get in his head, be kind of all over the place and have to be reset and brought back in, which this is where I flipped it and I put Sahith with Keegan.
Yeah, that's actually a good vet to have alongside him there. I would understand that 100%. Showing him the ropes a little bit, and I think Keegan's a guy who would do a really good job of taking Sahith under his wing, and I feel like Sahith is the type of guy who would really appreciate Keegan Bradley doing that for him.
So the way I took this, unironically, is when did Keegan Bradley play his best in the President's Cup and the Ryder Cups? It was him up and coming, finding his game, being paired with a veteran Phil Mickelson. I think this is the reverse, where now Keegan is that vet and here's the new young gun, where Keegan is a good fit for him to help keep his head on his shoulders and get him through. If there's early struggles, whatever, help coach him through, pick him up, and remind him that it's a team event and it's not over until we finish 18.
I actually really like that. You talked me into that pairing. I would be all in for that, and that would leave Sam Burns and Tony Finau, correct?
Yes.
All right.
Which I do not hate that matchup. I think as long as they play to their strengths, that's another point.
Both of them can mash the shit out of the ball off the tee. Sam Burns can get the putter going. I like that. What do you think about the international side of things? I think much more unpredictable just because there are a lot of new faces, and obviously we only get to see this group at the President's Cup every couple of years. To me, it just feels like you got to keep Tom Kim and Siwoo together because they were absolutely electrifying. But other than that, it feels like it's really up in the air for the internationals, Ross.
I honestly don't know if I can tell you an exact matchup on the international side, and the reason is I think you have a lot of good current form on the international team. I also think there's a very fucking high ceiling for just about every player on that international team, where it is kind of what pairings are going to bring out that ceiling on both sides. Because if they're paired correctly, whichever way it lines up, these teams can take down the U.S. Do I think it's going to happen? No. I think just history is going to continue to roll out. But the talent is there to make some noise and hang in there until day 4.
The Americans, their top guys are dogs, but the bottom 6 of that team, you're not really scared of any of them, in my opinion. Like, I don't think they're going to be scared of Brian Harmon or Russell Henley, Homa, Burns, Keegan, like even Sahith. Like, those aren't players that you kind of have fear over if you're in the middle of a match and like tied up with 3 holes to play or something like that. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think, you think they go Mackenzie Hughes, Taylor Pendrith, full Canada?
I mean, I could see it.
I think that actually is a decent combo because Pendrith can hit the ball pretty decent. They both can putt pretty well. Adam Scott and Minwoo. Oh, Adam Scott and Day and Minwoo. Yeah, this could go a lot of different ways. Corey Connors and Mac Hughes, maybe, because Corey Connors can strike the ball and Mac Hughes can putt. Yeah, the international is clearly not as like easy to put down on paper, but gonna be really curious.
So I think the easiest way to spin this is I have pulled up the U.S. team and the international team, and I have them ordered by the number of points that they earned. Yeah, all right, Homospethian. No, we're not going to the dark side. Sorry. So I have it pulled up here, and it's U.S. team versus the international team. And now we're gonna make this simple instead of comparing what could be a potential singles matchup, blah blah blah. We're just gonna go down and say this person versus this person, because I think once we get off the top of this list, I think this is going to truly prove how 50-50 it actually becomes. So if you start at the top of the list, number 1 in points versus number 1 in points, Scotty Scheffler versus Hideki Matsuyama.
Really interesting match because both of them are playing great. Hideki's been playing phenomenally, even though the Tour Championship didn't go the way that he wanted to. BMW, he withdrew, obviously, but I mean, a phenomenal season out of Hideki, really, and it feels like he was just starting to get the putter going as the season was coming to an end there. I'm still going to go with Scotty Scheffler because he's the number one player in the world, but it's not like his form in these events or even on Sunday singles is all that great for the United States. So, like, that's not a shoe-in that Scotty's going to go and beat Hideki on Sunday.
Exactly. And we also got Homus Beathian agreeing that Hideki could upset for sure. But I'm also going to go with you and say Scotty is where we probably lean to take that.
I think you just have to give respect to the number one player in the world, but it's not outside of the realm of possibilities that Hideki could beat him by any means.
Exactly. And so then we move to the second, which is Xander Schauffele, Sungjae Im. Xander is who we're taking here. We all know we're taking Xander in crunch time here. That's a little bit easier of a decision. We move on next. Colin Morikawa and Adam Scott.
I'm going to still go with Colin here, but he wasn't very good at the Ryder Cup last year. Obviously, that was on the road, and it was a different situation. But Adam Scott has been playing spectacularly to close out the year, right? He was in contention for a couple of different tournaments to close things out on the PGA Tour. I still think Colin, though, is in that he's just been playing such consistent golf. I know the win eluded him all season long, but I'm still going to take him in his form over Adam Scott. I have much more confidence over this one than I do Scotty over Hideki for sure.
All right. And now we're scoring this currently 3-0 to the U.S. Now this, again, Homus Beathian, just probably our number one fan.
Fire comments, bro.
So now this is where we're going to get interesting. We have 9 more to go. We have the U.S. up 3-0 at this point. Wyndham Clark versus Tom Kim.
This is a good one.
I'm checking one to the international team starting here.
This is a really interesting match. Two guys who I believe in both of their dogs. I believe in back against the wall, Wyndham Clark, Tom Kim. If they're on hole 17 and they need 17 or 18 and they need to go make a birdie, I have confidence that both of them can go and get it done. And it's not like Wyndham has like an experience edge over Tom Kim or anything, right? Like Tom Kim's been in the situation just as much as Wyndham Clark has been. Since I've gone with 3 Americans to win, and that's, probably unlikely, even though they are the best players in this event, it's probably unlikely that all 3 of them go and clean sweep. So yeah, I'll go with Tom Kim over this one. He is Mr. President's Cup himself after all.
So, and remember, this is not saying that these are going to be the matchups. This is just going top points, but this is where it's going to start to get interesting. Number 5, Patrick Cantlay versus Jason Day.
I don't believe in Jason Day. I'm just going to go out and say that. I thought he had like a disastrous year. I don't know if there's been any consistency in his game. This one to me is easy, Patty Ice. To me, this one's easy.
I'm also giving this one to Pat, but I think Jason Day will give a run. I'm not saying that, this ends. I'm not saying this ends on the 12th hole. Let's just say that.
No, for sure.
This goes further.
Jason Day is a seasoned veteran. Like, it wouldn't be ridiculous for him to go and pull off an upset of Patrick Cantlay. Like, we know Jason Day is a capable player. We just didn't see any consistency out of him throughout the course of the season. That makes me feel like he can just go and flip this switch right here, right now, because if it was that easy, he wouldn't have been such a ghost for a majority of the second half of the season.
Exactly. So moving on there, this is going to be one of the first true tough ones. Sahith Theegala versus Ben An.
This one is interesting to me because the way that Benny An plays golf, he can make a lot of birdies if he gets that putter going because he just hits the golf ball like no one else on planet Earth, man. I mean, Benny An can crush that driver. Sahith has gotten better off the tee in the last year, so like his deficit in that category, I don't think will be as bad as it would have been a couple of years ago. I could see Benny on getting this one, though, just because he is a good birdie maker. I feel like Sahith is a little bit more trying not to make mistakes. His short game can get him out of harm's way, like doesn't make a lot of bogeys, but I think Benny on is the better scorer of the two, which could give him an edge in a Sunday single battle.
Shout out Homospeedian from his comment earlier today. Sahith is the second largest roller coaster in the United States. Just constant up and down.
Guys fucking all over the place, dude. But the short game.
So with here, we're through the top 6, and we have the score 4-2. Keegan Bradley versus Christian Bezuidenhout. This is going to be the only one that I'm going to say I don't think Keegan Bradley is losing this match a single time out of 100. I think this is just Keegan is going to go and do the one thing he's been waiting almost a decade to go back and do again, and just smokes this one.
Yeah, I don't think if someone was forcing me to put money down on a Keegan Bradley, Christian Bezuidenhout match, I don't think there'd be any way for me to put money on Christian Bezuidenhout, just knowing how pumped up Keegan Bradley gets for these type of events and how much he's been missing this type of atmosphere, right? Like he's going to enjoy this through and through, and he's going to play with that extra passion. I will say Christian Bezuidenhout's putter makes him dangerous in a Sunday single matchup because the guy can go absolutely nuclear out of nowhere. But I will agree, I'm going to go with Keegan because fading him is just flat out disrespectful.
Moving along, we're going to get tough here. Sam Burns versus Corey Connors.
I'm going Corey Connors, dude. I don't believe in Sam Burns's. I just don't believe in him in these events.
Once again, I think Corey Connors is easily probably the most underrated player on the PGA Tour, all around skill set. Also, being in Canada, I don't see Corey Connors just losing a head-to-head singles match. I see him pulling that one out. So
King Canadian. And what I will say about Connors too, if you go and look at some of the data, putting so much better in the second half of the year, which has always been his kryptonite, always been his Achilles heel. The guy is legitimately one of the best ball strikers on the PGA Tour, and he's been that for ever since I've been watching golf. Corey Connors is an absolute flusher. It's just the short game that has been giving him woes, but he's made huge strides in those areas in the last 4 to 5 months. So yeah, I think he could be a dangerous one here for sure. In Sunday singles with that atmosphere and crowd behind him, right? Like Mackenzie Hughes and Taylor Pendrith are going to have the same thing, but Corey Connors is just a much better player than both of them.
So now this is where I'd like our audience to take in the fact that we've gone through this lineup. We're through 8. We're sitting at 5-3, favoring the U.S. with 4 to go.
Yeah, interesting. Especially, dude, this back half. Back half is really interesting.
Which is where we now move to Tony Finau versus Mackenzie Hughes, which I think becomes the first true coin flip of I could see going either way, because Mackenzie Hughes has a very high ceiling when he's on. It's a matter of, is he on?
Oh, it's just he's going to be asking so much of his putter in this match because he's going to be playing 30 to 40 yards behind Tony Finau every hole. I'm going to go Finau. But there is for sure the upside that Mackenzie Hughes runs a nuclear putter and is just chipping in from all over the place. But I think that's what he would have to do to beat Tony Finau because Finau's just much better off the tee and with his irons especially.
So we sit at 6-3. Brian Harman versus Siwoo Kim.
I'm going Siwoo. I do think Brian Harman is like the way that he plays golf though. He would be tough to beat in match play. But Siwoo was electric in Sunday singles last year, and I think Siwoo has that dog in him as well. So I'm going with Siwoo.
So we move right back. We're with two to go. We're sitting 6-4. Russell Henley versus Minwoo Lee. This, I think, is the most interesting matchup there is out there because one side is probably the best, one of the most consistent players in golf versus another player whose ceiling is so goddamn high and he has not reached it yet.
Dude, and they are literally two polar opposites in terms of the way they play golf, right? Like Russell Henley, he'll try to sneak in a couple birdies. He's going to make a lot of pars, plays an accurate precision style game. Min-Woo Lee is power. I'm going to try to make birdies. Sure, I'll make some bogeys, but I'm going to get it back. He can score super well, has the distance, a great long iron player as well. This is a really, really fascinating one. Really fascinating one. I'm going to go with Min-Woo Lee just because I think he's someone who would, the atmosphere would help take his game to another level. Whereas Russell Henley, it doesn't feel like he'd be a guy who really feeds off that type of stuff. Min-Woo Lee, just knowing his personality and how he goes about things on the course, I feel like he's going to love the roars that he's going to get in Canada this week. I'm going to lean Min-Woo Lee, but that, I will agree with you, is such an interesting match if we wind up seeing Henley versus Min-Woo on Sunday.
This is the only one that we're going to be different on, but
Oh, wow.
I'm glad we're different on, because I say if you need to make me pick, I'm going to take Russell Henley head to head. But if Min-Woo plays to his ceiling, this one is not even close. Min-Woo takes this.
And then we got Max Homa and Taylor Pendrith to round things out. Who you got in this one?
This is where it becomes tough again, because are we getting Max Homa from Rome last year, or are we getting Max Homa from the past 4 months?
For real.
Max Homa in Rome last year closes this out by the 13th hole. Max Homa from the past 4 months is probably missing a putt for par to drop this match to Taylor Pendrith.
I'm going to side with Max Homa on this one, because I think if Max Homa looks in the mirror on Monday morning and loses to Taylor Pendrith in a Sunday single, it might force him to rip his hair out. Like, that would be I don't want to call it a rock bottom moment, because Taylor Pendrith won this year and he is a capable player, but I feel like that would be a real, real low for Max Homa, that, like, I think he'd try everything in his power not to let that happen. So that's why I'd be siding with Homa there. But in terms of their recent form, I certainly don't feel comfortable putting my eggs in the Max Homa basket. But like I mentioned earlier, I do believe in his dog. I do believe that he is someone who enjoys these type of atmospheres and knows there's a rarity behind them. And it's a blessing for him to even be in the situation, given the last year that he had. I think Max Homa rises to the occasion and gets it done. Is it a landslide victory? No, but I think he does sack up and make the clutch putts down the stretch to ultimately get this one.
So basically, by breaking down this list and making hypothetically 12 matches, you and I just determined that the U.S. wins these 12 7-5.
Yeah, and I mean, look, if it comes down to Sunday singles, it would certainly be an interesting finish to this Ryder Cup. I don't know how much I'm going to be actually, like, full-fledged tuning in to the coverage through those first couple of days, but once Saturday rolls around, and if the internationals have a sniff, that's when you're really going to get my curiosity, and I'm going to start paying attention a little bit more. I'll be in for Sunday singles regardless of the score. I mean, Sunday singles is just such a beautiful thing in this sport. You don't get it very often. I'll be watching if the United States are up 14-7 or whatever it may be. But yeah, on the back half, if this thing is still up for grabs come Sunday afternoon, the United States might be getting a little hairy.
Which is why I came to my determination that I think it's going to be like a 16-14. And it's just you and I going through this list and all of a sudden realizing we came to almost a split. It went 7-5. Making this determination going down, if this was hypothetical 1v1 singles, it came down to 7-5. I can see this ending 16-14.
I would say the biggest thing for the internationals, Ross, since we just outlined how Sunday singles could really go in any direction, the internationals, if they want to make this competitive, they cannot be playing from behind the eight ball. They cannot be playing catch up, right? They can't be down 4 points going into the weekend, 5 points going into the weekend, and they have this huge lead that they have to make up. That, I believe, will be a recipe for disaster for them because they're just not going to be deep enough. So I think if the internationals can fend off the Americans these first couple of days, that's where they'll actually have life. If they're going to be playing from behind, this isn't going to be a race going into the weekend, in my opinion.
I think it's going to come down to the first couple days and how long the internationals can hang in. I do think they are going to hang in there and I think it's because it's in Canada. You have Mike Weir and everyone. Granted, it's French Canada. But remember, there is a difference, guys.
It is Montreal, Quebec.
There is a very big difference, but I do see this international team having some moxie and hanging around going into the weekend.
And I mean, just even like looking at the content that the PGA Tour has been posting and what some of these international players have been posting on their social media and whatnot, it just feels like obviously there's not as much of like a competitive, I mean, there is still, but it's not as serious as the Europeans versus the Americans. But it feels like the vibe that the internationals have, like they're happy to be there, happy to have this opportunity, happy to have this exposure, to come together as a team in this unique type of situation. It feels like that could really be their driving force. Whereas the Americans, who do get to experience the Ryder Cup and know this is a dampened down version, I'm sure they're still enjoying the experience themselves, right? But the true passion and fire that the internationals and the camaraderie that they have, like that could be the driving force behind them making this thing a fight.
Yeah, well, you just set that up so well that the international team kind of almost treats these opportunities when this tournament comes around, especially being in Canada, being like, "Oh, hey, how are you?
Oh, hey, how you doing? Oh, hey,
yeah,
good to see you here, buddy."
Yeah, so I don't know. We'll see. I think there's a potential this thing ends up a little closer than a lot of media and people are leading on for. I think the ceiling on the back end of the international team is very high. It's a matter of, do they reach it or not? If they reach it, be aware that this could come down to Sunday. I still think the U.S. gets this no matter what. But I will not be surprised if it's coming down to a Sunday afternoon and it's the last few singles matches coming in are where it's determined.
Yeah, I agree. I think the United States are still going to win this thing. They have the more talented roster, even though we have laid out a path for the internationals to be competitive here. I do expect the Americans to still come away with a victory, so much so that I do feel like that -230 line that's being offered right now is a pretty darn fair number considering who they have, their track record at this event. But I do agree, it's not just going to be a formality that the Americans are going to win, right? Like this could be a good competition here because, as you've alluded to, and as even Homospethian has alluded to in the comment section from down below as well, like the back half of the Americans isn't the scariest. A lot of them haven't been in the best form. It's kind of the big wins or the big finishes that they've had over the last couple of years that have got them in this spot. And then there is that matter that Homospethian brought up. Does the United States care as much as the internationals? These are all reasons to feel like the internationals can remain competitive, but at the end of the day, I don't feel like they have enough to go and beat the Americans. I do feel that they have enough to hang around and make this a fun event going into the weekend. So we'll see how it all unveils when the action begins on Thursday, not Friday, at the Royal Montreal Golf Club for this year's President's Cup. Sure, we're going to be hearing something about the pairings for both of these squads here in the next couple of days. But Ross, moving on from the President's Cup, we do got a couple of other things to get to before we tie a bow on today's episode. The BMW PGA Championship that went down last weekend was a spectacular finish. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you or to any of the listeners out there. I didn't watch it from start to finish. I had myself a pretty busy week, but I did sit down, and before football started on Sunday afternoon, I watched the final 4 or 5 holes before that 3-way playoff. But man, an exquisite finish, a lovely course, by the way. And I love the finish that Wentworth has. Both of those risk reward holes on 17 and 18 kind of fill the tournament with so much drama at the end. But how about our guy, Billy Horschel? Wasn't able to get it done at the Open a couple of months ago, but comes through and wins at Wentworth, taking down Rory McIlroy and Tristan Lawrence in a playoff, and in quite impressive fashion, Ross, because quite honestly, Billy Ho had to go and make birdie the hard way on 18 just to get into that playoff, when Rory, who, if he had birdied that final hole, would have been the victor of the tournament, he had it up near the green, just had to go and put a good chip on and get it up and down there. Billy Horschel had to lay up and hit his third from about 100 yards, nearly jarred that bad boy for the win in regulation, but goes on and drains an eagle in the playoff to beat Rory McIlroy. Always love to see good things happen to our guy, Billy Ho, Ross.
Well, shout out Uncle Tweeth for sending me the hat and his Gator boy Billy Ho bringing it in.
Yes,
my
sir.
My favorite part of this whole thing is we love Billy Ho so much just for being a good dude. The fact that he went and apologized that he beat Rory and had to take that one from Rory was just such a chef's kiss moment that I'm really sorry I beat you, Rory. I know you really wanted this one. I fucking loved that.
You know who would have loved those nice manners that Billy Horschel has? All the Canadians up in Canada for the President's Cup here this weekend. Sad we didn't get Billy Horschel on that team, but happy that, you know, he is someone who has gone over to Europe and enjoys playing the premier DP World Tour events. It feels like the fans have kind of resonated with him well these last couple of years. If it wasn't going to be Rory McIlroy, you know he's always going to be number one over across the pond. Feels like Billy Ho, though, was probably like next man up for them, at least in that playoff situation, to appreciate getting a victory.
And honestly, I think this was a lot of it comes back to how he played at the Open.
Yeah.
I think he won a lot of people over at the Open and just genuinely enjoyed him as a player and a person. For him winning at Wentworth, it almost seemed like a home turf win because he had a lot of support there and people were glad to see him win.
Yeah, I'm glad to see him win. I'm glad that he's getting that love over across the pond. And you know, with him getting this victory, like he's just going to keep coming back, keep going back over and over again to play in those big time DP World Tour events.
Well, I mean, I don't know, you know, with Keegan now being the captain of the Ryder Cup for next year, they are going to need a veteran presence in that locker room. Does Billy Ho work his way in as the captain's pick if he continues to go down?
Dude, he'd be such a good vibes guy. He'd be such a good vibes guy. That would make me so happy to see him on that team. I think he's probably got to win something on the PGA Tour next year in order to get on that team. But from what we saw out of him, once he got his irons dialed and got his game back on track after that just disastrous 2023 campaign, if he can overcome that, I mean, I would not put it past Billy Ho to go and find a way to be on this Ryder Cup team in 2025.
And yes, I 1,000% set you up for that one with how we line this up. That it is something I've tinkered with in my mind, that you always need a veteran presence type person in that room. This year for like the President's Cup, I think Keegan is that guy, which now alternatively, he's going to be leading the squad next year. I feel like Billy Ho really fits that mold of being that tour veteran 12th man guy that can go out there and play and hold his own. But the main job is pump everyone up and keep everyone together.
Yeah, 1,000%. He'd definitely be on the back end of the roster if he were to make it. He wouldn't be playing in a ton of matches, and then just Sunday singles or something like that. But no, you're absolutely right. He'd be there to get everyone on point, everyone fired up and locked in, and I'd be 100% there for it. Unfortunately, Billy Horschel's win came at the expense of Rory McIlroy, who I think, just to sum up his entire season, it's Billy Horschel saying, "I'm sorry for winning, Rory. I'm sorry that you didn't win this one." This the narrative of Rory's entire season. So close, but sorry it wasn't you, buddy.
Yeah, and I'm actually kind of wondering, like, Do you think this makes Rory better, or do you think this brings Rory down now?
It's a very good question, man. And golf is such a finicky game that, like, you would like to put your finger on it and say it's for sure going to go one way, but that's just not the way it works. And one thing I've even, in a similar fashion, not to change this conversation into a different direction, but I was kind of thinking on a similar trajectory of that, like, based on the year that Colin Morikawa had, do you think he's going to win a lot next year? Or do you think, like, these were his opportunities to win and he didn't? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it feels like it would be easy to say, well, Rory, he's played so good, this is going to fire him up. But at the same point in time, he put himself in positions to get those wins and didn't. Like, he was playing good enough to win, but didn't. What's the guarantee that he's going to play that good again next year? If you know what I mean. Like, golf is just such a weird game.
That's the way I've been trying to draw it up in my head, is how does that affect you? How does that make you feel?
Right.
Is it the, oh my God, I came so close so many times and I have nothing to fucking show for it? Or is it the, I'm right there, I just need to keep doing what I'm doing?
Honestly, thinking about it, I feel like Rory has tried so many different things because there's been this 10-year drought and he's tinkered with his schedule, his swing. He's gone and seen Joe Mayo weeks before the Masters, right? Like, he's tried so many different things, and I feel like it's probably not going to, like, be all that different next year, right? Like, Rory is the player that he is. He's going to put himself in these situations, but you have to wonder about the scar tissue, right? Like, I expect Rory to be competitive and to be top 10ing more events than not. It's, will he be able to brush past all that scar tissue and remind himself that he is still the man? That's the question. That's the question for Rory.
So the only thing that I can think of that makes me lean towards progress and maybe looking at a big season next year is the past season of Full Swing, when they had Rory in the locker room and Rory was doing the whole, we got to break it down. We got to, like, start from scratch everywhere, because it's him at the PGA Championship when Brooks wins.
Yeah.
And it's him saying, like, we got to break it down. We got to start from scratch. That to what we've seen this year, I took that as significant, immeasurable progress.
Okay.
In the right direction. From where he was when that was filmed to where we are right now, I took that as immeasurable progress in the right direction, where I'm hoping that he's looking at this as, I finished second. I won a couple events. I finished second several fucking times. I barely lost a major. Huge choke, by the way, which is going to go down. That's, yes, huge choke. You definitely blew that one. But there are also multiple other times this year that you put yourself in contention and came just short, where I'm hoping he, for the sake of golf, and let's be honest, it's better when Rory's in contention and Rory's winning things. People like Rory. Rory is a very likable person, and you want to see the best in golf. Like, we can't have Scotty Scheffler be our boogeyman every goddamn week. Like, some weeks I want to bet on Rory and take some money home on Rory and see Rory win something, right? I'm hoping he takes this and looks at this as, we're trending in the positive direction. Don't change anything. Just keep doing what you're doing, because the results are coming.
Funny enough, Ross, I don't know. That's what it was. I was watching Bryson's new YouTube video that he dropped today. And for some reason, it just inspired me to go back and watch the PGA Tour uploaded final round of Bryson and Rory at that US Open. And literally watching Rory miss those two putts on 16 and 18 down the stretch. Literally what I thought to myself today was, they're going to write books about that. Like, they're going to write books about Rory that finish of that US Open and Rory missing two putts, both with inside of 5 feet to blow the US Open, man. It's going to be interesting to see what that one does to him.
And then we got our boy Homo Spiethian with, this is actually a really good one. Damn.
I would say my response would be why would I believe that it's going to stop when how could I phrase this? Rory would have to show me the inconsistency for me to believe that it's coming. Like there's nothing that makes me believe that Rory isn't still one of the top 3 players in the world, and whether that means he's going to win the event or not, more times than not, he's inside the top 10. And I until that stops happening, I can't be confident that it's going to stop. I'm going to have confidence that Rory is still going to be competitive week in and week out, even at his age.
So the best answer I have for this is the modern day athlete is something that we've never seen before.
Facts.
The longevity that people have is something we've never seen before. And I'm not his super fan or anything, but like look at someone like Tom Brady playing till almost 46. Look at Jaromir Jagr is still playing in the fucking Czech league at 52. Right?
Final year, man.
Where and it's fun and it's funny because we joke about these things, but like where the Champions Tour historically cuts off and it's like, oh, once you hit 50, you're just on this tour and on your way out. I don't think that's going to be the thing in the future moving forward. I think you're going to have guys on the PGA Tour well into their mid 50s, pushing 60, that can still go out there and fire off a low round and not win the event, but place a top 10 and make the money and put themselves in contention consistently, where you could go 20 years down the road when Wesley's in college or whatever, crazy thought, but whatever, that we could see a 55-year-old Rory McIlroy is in the second to last pairing at the U.S. Open on a Sunday.
I would say with the rolled back golf ball, that is going to be a possibility. If they weren't going to roll back the golf ball, these guys would be toast going into their 50s. But because of a rolled back golf ball, and like as you said, the modern day athlete, because there's so much technology and so much science behind nutrition and the instant feedback that you can get for a golf swing. And we know that golf is not a physical sport, right? Like we have seen little 5'0" 100-pound nothing guys hit the ball 315 yards because it is a form sport.
Be nice to Brian Harmon.
Brian Harmon's not one of those guys that hits at 300 yards. Even Rory, low-key, when you see Rory in person, he's like not as big as you would think he is. Rory's like 5'9", 5'10", but can absolutely mash the golf ball. But because it is one of those sports, right? Like you don't have to be absolutely yoked in pristine shape to play. And I think that's just going to continue to be the case with the modern athlete and these sports evolving and evolving and evolving. So quite honestly, just a final thought, that comment by Homo Spiethian. I don't anticipate seeing a decline from Rory in terms of his week in and week out competitiveness. I can't expect that until I actually see it, because we've seen this kid do it for 17 years in a row now. Even though it has been 10 years without a major, he's still there week in and week out.
Homo Spiethian. Dude, we're just going to have to get you on the show at one point as a guest, because you follow the vibe.
He's going to have to come on for sure. But last couple of things I did want to get to here, Ross, is we're closing in on an hour somehow, some way on this episode. I know you did want to talk about an interesting little tidbit that was dropped surrounding the DP World Tour and the Asian Tour, with Justin Rose and Tom Kim both committing to an Asian Tour event in Hong Kong. Can you kind of run through that situation for those who are listening or watching this right now who might not understand what the heck I'm talking about?
So obviously I'm the resident LiveBot informational PIF merger guy, and have been for the past year since I joined the team. So the Asian Tour has essentially become a version of the International Series, which is considered the Live Feeder Tour, or the Live Tour now finds their next generation of players and brings them up out of professionals. There has been previous sanctions and rules that the PGA players can go play in these events, but they cannot play in these events opposite a field like a DP World Tour event. If both these events are going on, they are required that they have to go play the DP World Tour event, because that is still along Jay Monahan's lines and everything else people want to keep in construction. Tom Kim and Justin Rose are going to go play the Hong Kong Open this year, opposite the Australian Open for the DP World Tour, which is a huge event yearly. So you have two of the best players in the world are going to go play the Asian Tour event, which is kind of showing that the guard has come down, in these rivaling tours, and bodies aren't so big at keeping that guard up and allowing players to kind of pick and choose what tournaments they want to go play in, which is just leading me to believe that we are actually a little bit further along with a potential deal in a future merger than we think we actually are.
God, I really hope that is the case. But this does feel like absolutely a step in the right direction, and maybe something that hasn't gotten on people's radars. But this is certainly notable that these two guys are allowed to play over there.
Historically, in the past 2 years with everything, this would be a major no-no. This would 1,000% not happen. It's the fact that they are letting two of these world top 50 golfers are going to go and basically compete in an event that is a live feeder tour event. They're allowing them to go do this opposite of a DP World Tour event, which is a major DP World Tour event every single year, which ironically Waco Neiman did win last year. But that's besides the point. It's the fact that lines and boundaries that were initially set are now being allowed to be crossed without any type of penalty, and no one's making a big deal about it. Just, you can go play where you want to play. You can play the events you want to play in. Obviously, live golfers can't come over and play a PGA Tour event, but what I'm hoping for moving forward now, the PGA of America already made a big stance last week that they're going to allow live players to play in next year's Ryder Cup if they can gain the points. What we're hoping with little things and little tidbits like what we're seeing this week is that the live players can come and play like DP World Tour events and go and win and get the points and make themselves eligible, which would be a huge first step towards unification again. And just this little tiny thing that kind of seems to go unnoticed is actually a big step, that borders and boundaries are being allowed to be crossed and rules are being allowed to be broken. And it looks like it's for the betterment of golf. And it's not like, oh, this was missed and you can't do that. It's like, oh no, welcome.
As you said,
can do that if you want.
As you said, for the betterment of golf. We know live players to go and play on the PGA Tour and vice versa. That isn't going to happen. But for the rest of these tours, this is important to get these notable players into these type of events, to also allow them the opportunity to go and play in arguably the biggest event in the sport outside of the 4 major championships, or maybe even the Ryder Cup does compete with those types of tournaments because of its uniqueness. This is a very notable path that has now opened up, that I feel like everyone is coming to a realization that, yeah, this has kind of been dumb. It's been a little bit of a waste of everyone's time. We should just allow these guys, because guess what? The fans are going to win if we allow these players to go play. The players are going to win, and our businesses are going to win. Everyone wins when you allow these guys to do these things. Everyone wins.
And the biggest thing to note is what makes this a little bit easier, but also makes it notable, is Justin Rose won the Hong Kong Open in 2015. Tom Kim won it in 2022. And that actually led Tom Kim to get an invite to the initial live event, which he turned down because he had won that event. And at that time, that's when the Asian Tour started to become a live feeder tour. Yeah. So it's more that they're welcoming previous winners back. They're allowing these PGA Tour superstars to come play in their event, Boundaries are being able to be crossed. There is no repercussion for doing so. It looks like, at least on that end of the DP World Tour, in the Asian Tour, they are opening up. They're with open arms, just kind of saying, let's just play the fucking golf.
Love that. Love that. Step in the right direction.
Jay Monahan, if you want to take some notes, I think you could learn a couple things. I'm just saying.
Jay Monahan, play ball, you fuck. Last but certainly not least, Ross, we got the Spanish Open on the DP World Tour this week. Not something that I'm going to be watching intently or anything, but there are some notable names that are in the field. Jon Rahm, Tommy Fleetwood, Tyrrell Hatton, Shane Lowry, Aaron Rai, Patrick Reed, Mathieu Pavon, Sepp Straka, Vic Perez, and Matteo Manassero, who I forgot to give a shout out to when we were talking about the BMW PGA Championship, because our boy Matteo, who we were on at the Scottish Open, for everyone who may remember that, Ross and I were two of the only people on the internet who bet Matteo Manassero 400-1 at the Scottish Open, was in contention going into the final round. Had a 3-shot lead going into the final round of this tournament after a 9-under 63 on Saturday. Unfortunately, Matteo wasn't able to pull through, but I do think he's starting to get close, Ross, and just the way that he's revitalized his career in the last year and gotten himself back up onto the scene. I really do think, I don't know if it's going to happen this week. I don't know if it's going to happen this year. Matteo Manassero is going to win something in the next year, and it's going to be an awesome story. But I just want to know your thoughts, or if there's anyone you like going into this week's Spanish Open on the DP World Tour. You are still on mute, unfortunately, by the way.
Yeah, so I have not actually looked deep into the roster for this week because I've been trying to write up on our President's Cup and everything. Is Bobby Mack in the field?
I don't believe so. I will go ahead and look for you right now, but I feel like when I was looking at the odds, there's no way Bobby Mack would have been bigger than 40-1, I think. But I will go ahead and pull it up for you right now, just to double check. The Tour de España, win only. Is Bobby Mack here?
Also, to our fans, if the audio sounds terrible, it's because my AirPod died. So.
Yeah, it happens. It happens. Bobby Mack is not here, by the way. But you got Rahm at plus 280, Fleetwood at 900, Hatton at 900, Lowry at 14, Rai at 14, Wallace at 18, Reed at 22, Matteo at 25, Straka and Pavone at 30, and then Perez and Fitzpatrick at 40. I like Manassero just because I've been backing him, or I haven't bet him throughout this DP World Tour swing since the PGA Tour season obviously came to a close. 25-1 feels like a good number. I don't know if I'll actually get there. Vic Perez 35-1. I also thought was a good one as well.
I would break my rule this week. Only because he's been playing really well lately, and I feel like he's a little fiery. I like Tyrrell Hatton at that 9 number.
Okay. I certainly wouldn't be opposed to it. I'm a big Hatton guy myself. Can't get to Rahm plus 280, but also wouldn't be shocked to see him win this thing. I don't really have any concrete thoughts on any of these guys, but was just curious if you had someone that you had an inkling that could get it done this week. I know Alex Fitzpatrick has been playing really good as well. 45-1 seems like a good number.
Grant Forrest had a nice little run at one point last week. He's out there at 80.
Okay. Talk to me. Who else we got from down here? Anyone that I know? These back end of the DP World Tour events get hilarious.
Beef. You got beef at 100.
Should I get Nacho at 200? Good old Nacho Elvira. Vic Perez and Matteo were the two that kind of stood out to me. Don't know if I'm actually going to bet either, but because there are notables in this event, I did want to be sure to bring it up. But Ross, I think that's going to wrap anything up. Did we miss anything that you wanted to get to at all?
Nope, that's it.
Perfect. Somehow we got this bad boy over an hour, believe it or not. Want to thank everyone who tuned into this episode of Golf on Tap and stuck with us through the full hour. And again, a reminder to please go and follow the show wherever you may listen to your podcast, 100% free, not going to cost you anything. Really helps us out here at the On Tap Sports Network. And make sure to go and check out ontapsportsnet.com for all the latest news on Cubs, Bulls, Blackhawks, movie reviews, beer reviews, everything that you need here for the Chicagoland area. If you want to check me out on X, you can find me at Jack Bushman2. You can find Ross at RossJohn22. Until the next episode, everyone, enjoy the President's Cup this weekend. Go red, white, and blue. We'll see if this bad boy is close at all. We'll be sure to recap it next week. Until then, crack 'em, lock 'em, everyone. Enjoy the rest.